it kind of weirdly fits with Midsummer, the idea of like other people carrying your grief for you. Yeah, I'm sure this is the only podcast that's comparing those two movies. But yeah, I just thought there was something really...
You could call Midsummer The Farewell also.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, gather all the brokenness and bring it to me now. The fragrance of those promises you never...
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 566 with a review of The Farewell. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest film releases coming to a theater near you. This week, we are talking about The Farewell. We are back from our respective trips that we went on.
From our farewells.
Yeah, our farewells. And this is our fair return. I don't know. What's the opposite of farewell?
I guess welcome doesn't have the right, connotation.
Yeah.
Greetings.
Greetings and salutations.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are back. Hopefully we'll be returning to a more regularly scheduled release.
Welcome. Welcome and farewell, of course.
Yeah. That's it.
We did it.
It's late. We're tired. But yeah, so we're kind of back. We wanted to pick up here where we are. We decided to make an executive decision and skip The Lion King because we hear that it's not really that great.
Can I tell you though? I almost watched it in Bangalore on Thursday.
Did you really?
Yeah, there was a theater showing it, and I looked at the time, and my flight out wasn't until 3 a.m, and I was like, I could do it.
Do you know if it was dubbed or subtitled?
I imagine it was probably still in English because there's no I mean, each state in India has their own language, but there's enough other people that English is a pretty common transfer language.
It's, you can't see the movie because there's just all sorts of subtitles covering the whole screen.
Yeah, who knows? I'm pretty sure that one would have been in English.
Yeah.
But I didn't give it a chance. I decided I would eat some food instead of, watching The Lion King.
From everything I've heard, that was probably a good choice.
Yeah. I did listen to the Lion King soundtrack on the plane, though.
The original or the current
one? The original.
One?
Definitely the original. And, I just can't wait to be king has been stuck in my head ever since.
Nice. But yeah, so we are going to talk about The Farewell. This is a film that I saw at SF Film. You were leaving for a trip.
I was going to a wedding in South Carolina.
Okay, so you missed it for a wedding. So will be talking about it with months in between when I originally saw it.
Yeah, we're going to have 2 of these episodes in a row because I'm going to do the same thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood next week.
Yeah, it's our new format. One person sees it several months ahead of time and then waits to talk about it, and the other person talks about it literally having just come from the theater.
Yeah.
This should be fun. I think that my thoughts at the time are pretty ingrained in my head, so I think it should be safe. There is another one of those secret episodes.
Yeah, I remembered. I remembered you talking about this at least partly on the podcast.
Yeah, so that one.
Did you re-listen to the raw audio of it?
I didn't re-listen to the raw audio, but it's there. I remember distinctly what I said, and I'm going to try to the best of my ability, repeat that here on the podcast.
But before, do you have any plane movies that you would like to share from your journeys to Ireland?
So I don't have the stamina to consume media for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. What I do on planes is watch movies I've already seen on other people's screens.
Oh, great. Not creepy.
I mean, it's okay. It's screens many rows ahead of me. It's not like the screen right next to me or anything. But I turn off the screens directly in front of me because I don't want the distraction, and then I can't help but watch things that other people are watching. So I saw A Star is Born, too many times. I saw Fighting with My Family, which I actually haven't seen for real, but I basically watched the whole movie on silent. Also, here's the thing. I was listening to podcasts and I was just swiping through the thing and they had all the Marvel movies. Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to put Iron Man on silent and I'll just turn on the closed captions. No closed captions for Iron Man. So I just watched half of Iron Man on complete silence.
What were you listening to while you watched it?
It was, just a playlist of all the politics podcasts.
Have you considered listening to Iron Man?
The song.
It just feels like you could, get in the zone.
Yeah. But no, it was still enjoyable watching it on silent.
How did you like Fighting with My Family without words?
Well, so here's the weird thing. I wasn't 100% creepy. I was just partially creepy.
Yeah.
So I would watch and kind of tune out and watch, and like the girl's hair changes color like multiple times, and I couldn't tell whether. And then like I can't tell whether that like is that her brother or her husband?
Her brother.
Who does he have the baby with?
His girlfriend.
Okay. Do we meet the girlfriend?
Sure, a little bit.
Okay. I just saw them fighting. I was like, wait, is that? I was like, what's going on here? So it's very confusing with no sound.
Yeah, I would recommend. Because I watched. That was one of the 12 things I watched on airplanes this week.
Yeah.
And I would say it is this year's Eddie the Eagle. It is definitely the feel good, sports-ish, movie where someone has an unlikely dream and then we get to watch them achieve it.
But at any time does she yell, "I want to be a ski jumper"?
No, but they've got their own accents.
That was the first movie he was a Rocket Man in.
Yep. Oh, true.
Yeah.
Wow.
See, that's the ski jumper joke.
I like it. Yeah. Well, I watched many, many, many films as established. I think I'm forgetting one or two because I jotted them down and it doesn't seem right. But the ones that I know I saw were High Flying Bird, Her Smell, Hump Day, Fighting with My Family, Apollo 11. I rewatched Jerry Maguire, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Three Faces, Elephant, Teen Spirit, Dogtooth, and Transit. And then I couldn't take any more movies.
And how long was your flight?
So the flight to India it's a 11-hour flight to Frankfurt and then another 10-hour flight to Bangalore from there. And I did that and basically did it in reverse.
Okay.
Plus a little longer because of layovers and stuff.
Yeah. So
in total, I had 50 hours of airtime last week.
Yeah. Basically just you're getting there was my entire round trip.
Yep. Yeah, like when I was going from Europe back to the States, I was like, oh, I'm almost home, baby. Yeah. But a lot of those, not all of those were 2019 movies, obviously, but quite a few of them were. I really liked Her Smell, and I want you to watch it now.
Okay.
Because I don't think your dislike for movies with unlikable people will necessarily apply here. I think it might apply to parts of it, but I think there will be a payoff that is rewarding enough that you might enjoy it anyway.
All right.
Yeah. Fighting with My Family, I thought was great. I think I can't imagine a world where you don't enjoy that movie. Teen Spirit was a movie Carson turned me on to that's Elle Fanning as a, she's entering basically an American Idol type contest in Britain. It was either early this year or end of last year, but I don't think it hit the States till this year. And Elle Fanning does all the singing, and she's crazy good at singing. Huh. That's the main takeaway from the movie, but I liked it enough for what it is. I think if you didn't like Vox Lux, but if you wanted a version of Vox Lux where you can kind of like everybody and the music sounds really good, I think you would maybe enjoy this one.
And the filmmaker's not up their own ass? What?
Yeah.
Oh.
This filmmaker is definitely making a pop movie, not a movie about 21st century anxiety. And Transit, I don't know how you would feel about it. I thought it was a really interesting. It's kind of it's a movie that's based on a book that is set in World War II era Germany, but then the movie decides to make it be vaguely in modern day. It still feels kind of old timey, but then you see phones and billboards and things like that show that they're not, and it's trying to make you feel kind of lost and out of place. Huh. And it got me well. I don't know how I would feel if I was not watching it when I was in transit, so I was kind of in the zone.
You are a sucker for being in the state of which the film is talking about.
Yeah. I had a glass of red wine with me, and the movie was kind of ambiguous and floating in the fleeting connection between people who are on their way somewhere else. And I was digging it. I probably need to watch it again to really get it. And one that is not new, but I want you to watch Hump Day if you haven't seen Hump Day.
What is Hump Day?
I know people hate the word now, mumblecore, but it's a movie from 2009, I think, where Mark Duplass is a married.
You had me at Mark Duplass.
Yeah, Mark Duplass is a married guy. He and his wife are planning on having a kid soon, and then his old college friend, who's an artist who's been out traveling the world, crashes. He comes home and wants to crash on the couch, And one night when they're talking with a bunch of his artist friends, the discussion of the Hump Film Festival comes up, which is Dan Savage's amateur porn festival, where the premise of it, which is a real thing, the premise of it is people will submit a pornographic film, it'll air at this festival, and then be destroyed forever. So it's like if people wanted to do porn, but they don't want the notoriety that comes with it, then that would be a part of it. And they've been drinking a lot, and they have this discussion that they kind of egg each other onto of like, what would be really crazy is if two straight guys tried to make a porn together. And they basically, him and his friend, basically dare each other into we are going to film pornography between ourselves. And the premise sounds like it would look real bad by 2019 standards, right? Like, know how I know you're gay or something.
Yeah.
But the movie nails it so well. Like it becomes very believable that these two guys would have this kind of confused idea of what it means to be progressive or in control, or show that you're not a loser who doesn't get it, quote. And it becomes a weird a macho thing where they try to prove to themselves that they can do this, and it's really funny and really awkward, and I was actually quite impressed by that movie.
All right.
So Hump Day, everybody, holds up in 2019. That was not me hinting at anything, by the way.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
There's also one other thing that we both watched. I guess two things that you watched, but we are going to save that for potentially a future conversation to make that one really, really worth it. So that's just a little tease for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now, are you ready, Stephen, to talk about The Farewell?
Oh, I'm ready.
We're going to take a listen to the trailer for The Farewell, and then we're going to come back and give you a review.
What's wrong, Dad? Please tell me.
Your Nan is dying.
She doesn't know, so you can't say anything. The family thinks it's better not to tell her.
Why is that better?
Chinese people have saying, when people get cancer, they die. We have to go to China.
Wedding is an excuse so everyone can see her.
He's my only cousin. Don't you think I should be there?
You can't hide your emotions. If you go, Nan will find out right away.
Really 呀？咋啦？咋不说话呢？今天人多齐呀，好久没这么聚了，奶奶就等着这一天呐。来，大口咬，哇！哈哈哈哈！
你觉得我们应该告诉奶奶吗？
太痛苦了吧？
如果她想说再见呢？
你告诉她就毁了她美好的心情，你说对吧？
搭到她的肩膀上。你说我都怀疑我又不在，他俩在卧室能干啥呀？
Shouldn't we tell her? Isn't it wrong to lie?
It's a good lie. Most families in China would choose not to tell her.
你们说的啥呀？
她在英国学习，所以她会说英文。
结婚了吗？
She's dying. Can you be a little more sensitive?
What do you want from me? To scream and cry like you?
因为你把生命看成是个体的，这正是西方和东方的文化差异问题。东方人是把生命看作是集体的家庭。
I want to believe that's a good thing.
因为生活呀，不光是你去做什么，更是你如何去做。好多了，好多了，好多了，再来点气儿，再来点气儿。
So that was the trailer for The Farewell. Basically, it is a true story that was originally a This American Life episode, right?
Yep.
And it's since been made into other things, including this movie. And it's basically about a grandmother who the doctors basically determine that she is terminally ill and that she will be dying soon, and the family decides to keep that information from her, and she lives back home in China, and the family is going to travel back from the States over there to kind of hold this like mock wedding, I guess, to stage this wedding so that they can spend time with the grandmother and have fun with her, in hopes to kind of spend some time with her before she passes, all while trying to keep the truth about her results from the hospital away from her.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller, what did you think of The Farewell?
I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. And that is with a lot of things working against it tonight. One, as previously mentioned, I was just in India. I haven't really gotten good sleep since then. So I was pretty tired going into the movie. The girls at the Alamo Drafthouse who sat down next to me and each opened burritos wrapped in tinfoil and proceeded to slowly unravel the tinfoil throughout the first half of the movie.
So the guy in my theater told every single person in there, just so you know the rules, one of them is no outside food. Like, how did one of the servers not see it?
A guy saw it at the beginning and he was like, hey, you can't have outside food in here. And they put it away. And then 10 minutes later, they like reached in as if they were getting away with something.
Like, they just put it like in their purse?
Yeah. The guy was trying to be game. The thing is, I was mad about the noise, but I was also like stressed about if there is a confrontation and the guy comes again, that's just going to be even more distracting. So there was like I honestly contemplated like taking out my wallet and being like, I will buy you dinner if you order something instead of eat this fucking burrito next to me. But I feel like that behavior shouldn't be rewarded. Yeah. Anyway, so there were noise issues. I was quite sleepy. I was so sleepy, in fact, that like one big conversation in the third act of the film, I kind of like got in my own head and started thinking about like a rabbit hole, and then realized like for the last minute I hadn't been reading the subtitles. And even with that, I think this was just a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's tempting to kind of compare it or contrast it to Lost in Translation, which I know is a touch point for way too many things for me. But if Lost in Translation was about like Sofia Coppola as an outsider looking at what traveling to Japan and feeling isolated because you are not a part of that culture, like if that was her viewpoint, I feel like The Farewell is about someone going to a place where community is everything and giving us like an inside window. It's like an inside outsider view, right? It's a feeling of nostalgia for this place where everything seems to be moving a little bit more slowly, more quietly. Everything is about family and togetherness and each other. And it just puts you in this kind of very nice meditative place while you watch it. Meditative enough that you don't want to shout at the girl eating a burrito next to you. I think this is just a very, very charming movie. The plot, it's a very personal plot, and it's a good vehicle to dissect how family feels for a Chinese immigrant who has moved away from home. I think the plot itself is not that important to the charms of the movie. I think the charms of the movie are watching Awkwafina's family in China interact with each other in like incredibly believable older relative ways, and watching her absorb all of this information about her family and kind of come to terms with who am I, where do I belong, right? What does it mean to be from here but to have been away so long that I can't really speak the language that well anymore, and I can't really I can't embrace either thing, basically. And I thought this movie was just a really, really beautiful rumination on that. I think the character of Nene is adorable. The woman who plays her, I feel like she has to be Awkwafina's grandmother in real life, because that's the only way I can explain how like their chemistry feels that natural and believable. I do think Awkwafina did a good dramatic job, though I think you mentioned when we talked before that the role is pretty understated, so it isn't like it is that meaty a role to dig into. But considering she normally plays like big over the top characters,
wild character, yeah.
Seeing her do understated, I think it's kind of like when Sylvester Stallone does like a heartbreaking speech, and you're like, oh my God, you can be that also. And for me, that hit really hard. I think the soundtrack in this movie is really nice too. The there's a lot of like ambient music when they're just walking around China. But there's also a Leonard Cohen cover that comes when they're in a taxi near the end of the movie that got me real good. That was what like pulled me back into the emotional moment after my brain took me out of a monologue that I should have watched. Yeah, I don't know. I just think this was a lovely, quiet movie that could probably be hurt by overhype. Like, I think if people are coming into this with huge expectations of all the dramatic highs that it's going to hit, I think they'll be disappointed. I think what the movie does really, really well is keep a good, even keel and just let you feel what it would be like to be a part of this family. As someone who has like gotten nostalgic traveling to China a few times before being alone, I like a lot of that feeling got brought up for me here of just like the feeling of walking around on the street and feeling like a face in the crowd. And I don't know, there's just so much that I feel like the movie communicates really, really well. So yeah. I liked it a lot. I want to watch it again to pick up the little bits that my brain farted out of existence. And yeah, I was into it. Yeah,
so I very much enjoyed the process of watching the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think, as you said, it is incredibly charming. I think if it weren't for the family and their performances and just like the mundane part of the films, I wouldn't necessarily like it that much. But just the family is just so engrossing, and just seeing their moment to moment and just watching them interact. I don't know if it's the grandfather of the family, just the older guy who's just walking around doing his own thing the entire film. I don't even remember if he has a line of dialogue. He's just spilling water on the floor and like eating noodles sloppily in the corner.
He says, "I'll get it" once when somebody
time
tells him to get alcohol, which he's supposed to be basically deaf, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah. So like just every little bit of interaction between characters in this film is incredibly engrossing. The story itself, I think, is less captivating because I feel like the entire story of this film is just the elevator pitch and doesn't have much more to say outside of that, because it's one of those wild stories that when you hear for the first time in a This American Life episode, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like grandma's dying and the family's not telling her. That seems insane. And you want to hear from the person's mouth what that was like. And that's a really interesting story. Seeing it play out in real time is less interesting because you kind of get, like, you got it already. You're just watching a film that's because there is no complexity added. The entire film is just them keeping it a secret. Yeah. It's not like a stereotypical American film where at some point she's going to find out and that's going to cause a problem.
There's no grand speech from like a stage where she breaks out all the information. I think it's okay to say that.
It's literally just you're watching the family enjoy time with each other and everybody just knows that grandma's going to die soon and that's it. And I think it was funny because in the Q&A after the film, when I saw it at the festival, the filmmaker was talking about...
Oh, Lulu Wang was there?
Yeah.
Nice.
So she was there to talk about the film and the process and kind of what happened. And there was one moment in the Q&A where she said that she was talking, I believe, with her father about the fact that she was writing this film. And the father said, but who's going to want to watch that? Mm-hmm. And on paper, I'm on the father's side. Like, it doesn't feel like there is enough there to have a full conversation about. Like, the film can't do more than give you the premise, right? It's not saying grand things. It's not making grand gestures. It's just watching this family in this little slice of life moment. And that is incredibly compelling. Yeah. But part of my brain is just like, but there's no story. You just lied to your grandma, and that's the whole story.
I'll meet that and ask you before sunrise. Like, isn't there a whole subgenre of movies where the whole story is the elevator pitch, but watching the slow unraveling of the characters is the joy of it?
But there is no unraveling of characters in The Farewell.
The slow opening up of characters.
I feel like...
Because The Farewell is definitely paced in a way where, like, her father and uncle, for instance, are characters who are kind of stoic at the beginning, and then over the course of the movie, they have their times to open up a little bit more, and her aunt also does. And like, characters do kind of each have a moment where you learn a little bit more about them than you did at the beginning, in a way that feels like a movie that is about building the ensemble characters.
I guess for me, at the time and now, what I remember is I love this family and I love spending time with them. I don't really remember anything outside of the pitch and the fact that I love this family. And when we recorded that review that never appeared of our second week at the festival, I compared it to Small Enough to Fail or whatever that documentary was, where like I couldn't tell you what that was actually about. Like I knew that it was like a family who had a bank who was trying to help the community, and then like they weren't big enough to not fail.
But what it's really about is dad eating a sandwich and saying it's too dry.
Yeah. And like I love that documentary because the daughter and the father and the other sisters and like they're just all so hilarious and so charming. And I really enjoyed that documentary, not because I learned something about the financial crisis and what happened to this family's like family-owned bank and the tragedy of that. What I remembered is this love of this family unit and how they would eat food together. And I feel that The Farewell has that same exact charm, and that aspect of the story excites me. But like I'm still left wanting more about like whether it's the right thing to do to withhold this information, whether it's the wrong thing, what that actually does to the people who are pretending. Like we see, like Awkwafina is the only one who doesn't want to play along, and she is, I guess, maybe an audience surrogate a little bit, where like we see her not being comfortable with the whole thing that's happening.
Well, I
and
think
you're
there's
watching
something a little meta going on. Not meta, but I think the adults in her life are doing to her what everyone wants to do to Nene, which is they don't want to show her that they are feeling uncomfortable with the situation also.
Yeah.
And there are definitely moments when different adult figures seem to have like a moment where they crack, and you can kind of see like nobody likes to do this. And I think like one theme of the movie is that her parents have been withholding tons of stuff from her throughout her life too, right?
Yeah.
Like she wouldn't even know about this trip if she hadn't like noticed that they were acting funny and asked about it.
Yeah.
So I do think there's like a level there where because she's the American, she is the audience surrogate who is like unable to control the emotions that she's feeling, and everyone else wears a mask most of the time.
But she's also like she found out and is upset, but she was being left out because it's the equivalent of you can't keep a secret.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So all that being said, I very much enjoyed watching this film. I don't know if it'll last with me. Outside of just remembering the charm of the film, which is that's not like a complete diss against the film, but I think when I booked the ticket, you already knew you weren't going to be around that night. I had only heard very positive things about it, and you confirmed that it had a bunch of buzz coming out of like Cannes or whatever it was. Sundance, yeah. So it's like, all I knew is this is supposed to be like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I was like, yeah, that was really fun and charming, but maybe I just want some sliced bread.
Yep. Yeah, I hear that. And that is why I did feel like overhype can hurt this movie. And it isn't even because it can't hold up to it. It's like I don't think it is the sort of movie that is meant to hold up to it.
Yeah.
I think it's the sort of movie that has to be kind of like delicately handed around, you know?
Yeah.
I did like a lot of the specifics of the family dynamic too. Like grandma always seems to kind of speak her mind and say the brash thing without caring, you know, how it's going to be received. Like the first thing basically she says to Awkwafina when she walks in is like, "You look terrible. Your mom said you were skinny. I don't think you're skinny." The scene of the family at the grandfather's grave as a kind of proxy for them grieving her, watching her grieve her husband. But then everyone is like leaving things on the grave and smoking a cigarette and arguing about whether like the grandfather should smoke or not while he's dead. I thought all of that was really, really funny. And there were some, I thought, really good emotional conversations too. Like there's one between Awkwafina and her uncle and her father the night before the wedding, I think. And she is saying, you know, what she's been wanting to say the whole time, which is, why can't we tell her? Like, let's just tell her this is cruel. Like, this isn't right. And her uncle basically says, like, no, we do this so we can hold the emotional burden of it. We're not forcing it upon her. What you want to do is let go of your responsibility and throw it on someone else. And I thought that idea of, like, it kind of weirdly fits with Midsummer, the idea of, like, other people carrying your grief for you. Yeah, I'm sure this is the only podcast that's comparing those two movies. But yeah, I just thought there was something really...
You could call Midsummer The Farewell also.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I just thought there was something really beautiful about that idea that, like, the way these families see it is that, like, they are carrying the grief. It isn't that they're just holding, like, the grandmother with kid gloves because they don't think she can take it. It's that, like, they see it as a sacrifice, that, like, they are having to suffer through this without her there to, like, support them in it. Yeah, so I really, really enjoyed that. I also, I don't know, I just thought it was very gentle, and it rode this line between comedy and drama in a way that I really liked, where there are scenes that are, like, very funny, like there were definitely a few good chuckles in the audience, but it never tilts into, like, the wacky family dynamic movie. It is always more about, it's almost as if, like, someone is remembering their relatives and is, like, honoring by telling the stories that involve some quirky behavior and some tender behavior at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just felt like all that comes through really strongly in the movie. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do think the real story, what struck me is that at least in the movie, it sounds like this story was not remotely unique in China.
Oh yeah.
Like, the movie makes it seem like this is a very common thing that families would do in China. Which is interesting because it kind of it takes, like, the This American Life story feels like, wow, how interesting, how different. But really what it is like a look at a culture that we haven't experienced before.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of elevates it beyond, this is the thing that happened to my family, and more like, this thing is going to be the way I introduce you all to my family and my culture. And now that you're here, let's just explore that for a while instead.
Yeah. So what I think would be really interesting movie-wise is the, like, Schenectady, New York version of this, because, like, in the Q&A, they talked about how, like, they were scouting locations for the movie, and then they were like, you know what? The only place that's really going to work is basically my grandma's street.
Yeah.
And, like, it basically kept piling on where, like, now family members were in the movie and they were literally on the street, and so, like, they're making a film about how they lied to their grandmother about the fact that she's dying, and they're making the movie.
Yep.
And they're trying not to, like, let anybody spill the beans on what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think, like, the Q&A was really awesome to just kind of hear the conversations with the family and hear the decisions that were made to, like, where they were going to film and where they're going to, and, like, all the way down to, like, specific rooms that they were using to film certain scenes. And, like, I want to see that movie where it's the movie about the truth of them making the movie about the story that we are watching.
Yep. Yeah.
That would be great.
I don't know how, somehow I knew going in that Nene's sister in the movie is, like, her real aunt or great aunt.
Yeah.
And, like, I loved that character. That character, for good reasons, felt so real to me.
Yeah.
But it does have this kind of stories we tell, like, blending of truth and fiction that I liked a lot. One thing I feel this a lot with movies now, but I felt it very strongly here, is I wish I had not seen the trailer before, let alone, like, 20 times before, because the trailer, I swear.
So where have you been seeing the trailer?
AMC's been playing it a lot. Alamo has played it a lot. I feel like I've seen the trailer a bunch in the last few months.
Huh.
And the trailer kind of walks you through. I feel like every scene in this movie has, like, at least a shot in the trailer.
Gotcha.
And there's something about it that, like, when I was watching it, there were so many lines that I felt like would have hit me harder if I hadn't seen them chopped together already a bunch of times. So that was kind of a shame. one scene I liked that I don't understand at all. I wonder if they talked about it in the Q&A. Is this bird game that they're playing at the wedding toward the end? It seems like Chinese big booty, where they're like they're doing a thing, and then I think they say someone's name, and then it tosses it over to there, and then
around
they
the
have
table.
to say it back to someone else.
It's like the bunny up
drink
game, right?
end.
Where you have to like, I think it's I don't remember if they made it up or if it's just a flavor of another game that is played. But yeah, where they keep making the one guy drink.
Yep.
That was good.
Yep.
So I referenced it when I was explaining what the film was about, but is that a sham wedding or is it a real wedding that was moved up in time? Like I didn't understand whether the son of the family was actually dating this girl and they were pretending they were getting married, or if that was just a random girl they got to come on the trip to pretend to get married, or if they were already going to get married but they pushed forward the date of the wedding. I didn't understand what that dynamic is.
Yeah, I don't remember from the This American Life episode if they go into it. The sense from the movie, and this is coming from someone who left the movie like an hour ago.
Yeah.
So all I have is like whatever the movie was giving me. I think it was a real wedding, but it was escalated for the grandmother.
Like moved forward or
Yeah.
just... Okay.
Yeah, like I think it was moved forward substantially for the sake of the grandmother,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was like...
Because that couple is awkward as hell.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I couldn't tell with plus
Hey,
like
you'd be awkward too if you got married 3 months into dating somebody.
True. And that's the thing is I don't know how weddings are in China, so I'm like it wasn't the outfits they were wearing. It looked like a school dance almost, right? So I was so lost and confused because I just didn't know what was going on.
I feel like part of that. So I've never been to a wedding in China, but I have been to a 60th birthday celebration from a bunch of Cantonese people in Thailand, and that like ornate everything where things are dressed up as if you're kind of at like a fundraising event or at like a ballroom in a gymnasium or something like that. Like I feel like I've seen that vibe before.
Cool.
But yeah, I couldn't tell either where that discomfort was supposed to be coming from. I also couldn't tell if... So the bride definitely doesn't speak any Chinese in the movie. And so like I get the sense that they've both... Like the groom also has been in Japan for a long time, so he also doesn't really speak very well in Chinese anymore, but I wasn't really sure about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yep. Good times.
So should we get to verdicts?
Sure.
All right, Stephen Miller, if you're going to give this a must-see, recommend with the caveat, wait for rental, pass with the caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
Must-see. This is the kind of, like, blood pressure lowering movie that I really vibe with. That just, like, it's calm, it's quiet, it has a lot of beautiful things to say about family and life and the immigrant experience and the kind of, the straddling of, like, guilt and joy that you feel, that like guilt that you're leaving your family behind, but then you know that family is proud of you for leaving and is like excited for you at the same time. I thought that was all just really beautifully done in a way that was much more like nuanced than like I would say Crazy Rich Asians kind of tried to tackle those themes too a bit, of the feeling of being in both worlds at the same time and not fitting in with the family dynamic the way that you used to. But I feel like this movie just did it from a much more personal place.
Yeah, I mean, that film was overtly about that in the narrative, and this film is like one that tackles it on a more subdued, sort of naturalistic way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think Awkwafina is really good in this movie. I hope it launches a career that has as much drama as it does playing the comedic sidekick
the wacky person. Yeah. I think I'm going to give it a recommend with a caveat. I was incredibly charmed by the film, but it doesn't have the staying power for me. The narrative isn't as lasting for me outside of like, oh, that is a very odd tale. But I did very much enjoy it, and I don't think anybody could watch this film and not at least have like an enjoyable time with it. It just, doesn't tip that must see spot for me. Cool. Well, I believe that is going to do it for our review of The Farewell. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can go to twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so in Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from the soundtrack to The Farewell, so hopefully you are enjoying that. We are going to take off for now, but we will be back next week with a review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yep. 70mm edition.
Nice. See, I couldn't even tell you what version played at Cannes. Like,
it has to be the 70mm version,
it
right?
had to be too. And it was definitely like ultra wide. I don't remember them making. I guess they wouldn't make a big deal about it there, but
I assume that
I felt like someone would have written that somewhere.
I just assume that given Tarantino got the special hey, I'm still cutting the film, but it's going to be there next week. I assume he's not going to give them not his version.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your screening, just take for granted that it was the 70mm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're going to be doing that. So we'll be back then. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Healing of the spirit, come healing of the land.